In the 2nd century, the Roman Empire was arguably at its peak. The empire was peaceful, trade was flourishing, and life was about as good as it could get in the 2nd century. Much of this was due to a string of good emperors, the last of whom didn't just run a good empire, but left a legacy that's still influencing the world today. Learn more about Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, on this episode of Everything Everywhere Daily. This episode is sponsored by Quince. You've heard me talk several times now about Quince and how I've gotten some great items for my home, like my Turkish bath towels and my fisherman's blanket. Quince has must-haves like Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50, iconic 100% leather jackets, and comfortable pants for every occasion. With Quince, I can get high-end versatile pieces at prices I can actually afford. All Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. By partnering directly with top factories, Quince cuts out the cost of the middleman and passes the savings on to you. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices, along with premium fabrics and finishes. Indulge in affordable luxury. Go to quince.com/daily for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/daily to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Once again, quince.com/daily. This episode is sponsored by Mint Mobile. I don't know about you, but I like to know where my money is going. The problem is that big mobile companies like money too. After years of paying a ton for wireless services, I finally got fed up with crazy high wireless bills, bogus fees, and free perks that actually cost more money in the long run, and just switched to Mint Mobile. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at just $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all of your existing contacts. Nothing has to change. Ditch overpriced wireless and get 3 months of premium wireless service from Mint Mobile for just $15 a month. If you like your money, Mint Mobile is for you. Shop plans at mintmobile.com/EED. That's mintmobile.com/EED. Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, 5 gigabyte plan required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. If you look at any list of the greatest Roman emperors, Marcus Aurelius may or may not be at the top of the list, but he almost certainly would be on anyone's top 5. Unlike every other emperor, however, what makes Marcus Aurelius notable isn't just his accomplishments as emperor, it's a legacy that still influences millions of people today. The emperor we know as Marcus Aurelius was born Marcus Annius Verus on April 26, 121, in the city of Rome during the reign of the Emperor Hadrian. He came from a prominent family with connections to the imperial household. His father, Marcus Annius Verus III, died when Marcus was young, leading Emperor Hadrian to take notice of the boy. This imperial attention would shape his destiny. Marcus received an exceptional education, typical of Roman aristocracy, but with unusual depth. He studied Latin and Greek literature, rhetoric, and mathematics, but what truly transformed him was his introduction to philosophy. As a young man, he encountered various philosophical traditions, including Platonism, Epicureanism, before finding his intellectual home in Stoicism. His philosophical mentors played pivotal roles in his development. Diognetus introduced him to philosophical thinking. Junius Rusticus, whom Marcus later credited with shaping his character, introduced him to the works of Epictetus, the former slave-turned-Stoic philosopher, whose ideas would profoundly influence Marcus throughout his life. Marcus's rise to imperial power wasn't something that he actively sought. Emperor Hadrian, having no biological heirs, adopted Antoninus Pius as his successor, with the provision that Antoninus would in turn adopt both Marcus and Lucius Verus, the son of Hadrian's first choice who had died. This arrangement created a clear succession plan spanning 2 generations. In 138, when Marcus was only 17, Hadrian died, and Antoninus became emperor. Marcus was given the title of Caesar, marking him as the heir to the throne. During Antoninus's reign, Marcus served an extraordinary apprenticeship in governance. For 2 decades, he worked closely with Antoninus, learning the intricacies of imperial administration while continuing his philosophical studies. If you remember back to my episode on the 5 good emperors, this system of one emperor adopting his successor was really the key to this period of Roman history and the Pax Romana. In 145, Marcus married Antoninus's daughter, Faustina the Younger, further cementing his position. Their union, unlike many political marriages, appears to have been genuinely affectionate. They would have at least 13 children, although many died young, a personal tragedy that tested Marcus. As an aside, I should note that Faustina was the only woman in Roman history to be the daughter, wife, and mother of an emperor. When Antoninus Pius died in 161, Marcus took an unprecedented step. Although he was named as sole emperor, he insisted on sharing power with his adopted brother Lucius Verus, creating the first co-emperorship in Roman history. It's hard to stress just how radical of a move this was. The imperial throne was something that men killed and died for. In one case, Didius Julianus spent a fortune to buy it. Giving up part of his power was literally his first act as emperor. The Senate was prepared to declare Marcus the sole emperor, but he refused to take the position unless he was declared co-emperor with his adopted brother. Both Marcus and Lucius assumed power as emperor on March 7, 161. Despite the fact that they were officially co-emperors, Marcus was informally considered to be the senior emperor, as he had more auctoritas than his brother. His imperial name was Marcus Aurelius Antoninus Augustus. The first major crisis of their reign came almost immediately. Rome's eastern provinces faced invasion from the Parthian Empire. While Marcus remained in Rome managing domestic affairs, Lucius Verus led the military campaign in the east. Although Verus was nominally in charge, capable generals like Avidius Cassius secured victory, expanding Roman territory in the region by 166. As troops returned home from the Parthian campaign, they unknowingly brought back something devastating. A pandemic, later called the Antonine Plague, which was most likely smallpox. The disease ravaged the empire for years, killing perhaps a quarter to a third of the population in affected areas. This demographic catastrophe strained resources, weakened military capacity, and disrupted economic life throughout the empire. The other thing that defined his reign was the Marcomannic Wars. They represented one of the most significant military challenges faced by the Roman Empire from approximately 166 to 180. These conflicts weren't a single war, but rather a series of related campaigns against various Germanic and Sarmatian tribes along Rome's Danube frontier. The conflict began dramatically around 166-167 when a confederation of tribes led by the Marcomanni and the Quadi broke through Roman defenses, crossed the Danube, and invaded Roman territory. This wasn't merely a raid, but a significant invasion, with tribal groups penetrating deep into Roman provinces. Climate change, population pressures, and the movement of more aggressive tribes like the Goths from the north and the east pushed these tribes southward towards Roman territory. These tribes sought new lands and security within the empire's borders. The devastating Antonine Plague and the deployment of legions to the eastern front weakened the Roman frontier along the Danube, and these tribes took advantage of that situation. In one of the most shocking developments, some Germanic forces managed to reach northern Italy and briefly besiege the town of Aquileia, the first time in centuries that a barbarian army had reached Italian soil. This created genuine alarm throughout the empire. New legions were raised despite manpower shortages caused by the plague. Marcus Aurelius even enlisted gladiators and armed slaves when regular recruits were insufficient. To fund the war effort, Marcus did something that was again almost unheard of amongst emperors. He auctioned items from the imperial palace rather than increasing taxes on provinces already suffering from the plague and invasion. Both Marcus and Lucius personally went to lead troops in the north. However, Lucius died in 169, possibly from the Antonine Plague, leaving Marcus Aurelius as the sole emperor. Pretty much for the rest of his reign, and hence the rest of his life, Marcus was personally devoted to protecting the empire on its frontiers to the north. From 167 to 171, the initial Roman response focused on driving invaders back across the Danube and re-establishing frontier defenses. This phase ended with significant Roman victories that forced several tribes to sue for peace. In the second phase, which lasted from 172 to 175, Marcus adopted a more aggressive strategy, taking the war into enemy territory across the Danube. His goal appeared to be the creation of two new Roman provinces, Marcomania and Sarmatia, to provide a deeper buffer for Italy. However, the rebellion of the Roman general Avidius Cassius in the east in 175 interrupted these plans, forcing Marcus to negotiate settlements with some tribes in order to free up troops. After resolving the Eastern Rebellion, Marcus began a third phase of the conflict in 177, returning to the Danube and the frontier to complete his planned subjugation of the Marcomanni, Quadi, and Sarmatians. Marcus imposed severe conditions on defeated tribes, including establishing demilitarized zones extending several kilometers from the Danube, placing Roman garrisons in tribal territories, making requirements to provide recruits for Roman auxiliary units, and demanding regular tribute payments. Marcus appeared determined to permanently resolve the northern frontier issue. Extensive preparatory work had begun for organizing these regions into provinces and for incorporation into the empire. However, Marcus Aurelius died in the year 180 in Vindobona, which is modern-day Vienna, while still campaigning on the frontier. His son Commodus, who had joined him on campaign, quickly negotiated peace terms and abandoned his father's plan for provincial expansion, preferring to return to Rome. Marcus Aurelius had a legacy of self-sacrifice and wise rule. However, unquestionably, the worst thing he did was leave the empire to his son Commodus. Marcus is considered to be the last of the good emperors, simply because Commodus was such a bad emperor. The story of Commodus I will leave for another episode, but suffice it to say, many historians mark the beginning of the end of the Roman Empire with the reign of Commodus. Everything I've described so far about Marcus Aurelius isn't that radically different from other Roman emperors. Wars with Parthia and Germanic tribes were pretty par for the course for the Romans. However, I mentioned earlier that Marcus Aurelius is still influencing people today. Well, how is that? It actually has nothing to do with anything he did as emperor per se. During the last decade of his life, while fighting in the Marcomannic Wars, he kept a very active and personal diary. Far from the comforts of Rome, surrounded by conflict, disease, and hardship, he used writing as a spiritual discipline, a way to anchor himself and maintain inner clarity amidst chaos. The writings were never intended for publication or even to be seen by another human being. Rather, they served as a private journal, a place for him to practice Stoic exercises, remind himself of core principles, and maintain personal discipline amidst the immense pressures of ruling and warfare. After his death, his writings were found and passed around for years. They were eventually published with the title Meditations. The structure of Meditations is loose and fragmentary. It's divided into 12 books, each containing short entries that range from practical reminders to philosophical musings and deeply introspective thoughts. The tone is often self-critical, revealing a man struggling to live according to the Stoic ideals of virtue, reason, and acceptance of fate. Themes such as the brevity of life, the inevitability of death, the importance of rationality, and the need to remain just and composed reoccur throughout his works. Rather than presenting a formal philosophy, Marcus uses the journal to reaffirm values like humility, endurance, and the importance of fulfilling one's duties as a human being, and for him, as emperor. What makes Meditations especially powerful is its raw human quality. It's not the voice of a distant philosopher, but of a man trying day by day to be better, grappling with fatigue, anger, loss, and responsibility. The writing is deeply personal, yet universally resonant, offering timeless insights into how to live with integrity and purpose. Over the centuries, this private notebook has become one of the most revered works of philosophy, offering a glimpse into the inner life of one of history's most thoughtful leaders. His meditations have had an enduring impact far beyond what Marcus Aurelius could have ever imagined. This personal philosophical diary became one of the most significant texts of Stoicism and has influenced thinkers from Christian theologians to modern psychologists. Many people today still turn to his words for wisdom and consolation in times of personal and social crisis. Despite being written over 1,800 years ago, the writings of Marcus Aurelius are still in print today. And because it's in the public domain, copies of Meditations can be downloaded freely, and there are cheap physical copies available at most bookstores. Perhaps Marcus Aurelius's most profound legacy is the example of someone striving to live virtuously despite wielding enormous power, attempting to align his actions with his principles even when faced with overwhelming pressures to compromise. As he wrote in Meditations, quote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." This is why he is often considered to be the embodiment of Plato's vision of a philosopher king. His life reminds us that philosophy isn't merely an intellectual exercise, but a practical guide for living. A reminder as relevant today as it was in the 2nd century. The executive producer of Everything Everywhere Daily is Charles Daniel. The associate producers are Austin Oetken and Cameron Kieffer. Today's review comes from listener QWERTY80001 over on Apple Podcasts in the United States. They write, "I like the show, Gary. The show is good. It's fun to listen to random subjects so I'm not late for school because I watch TV. Keep up the good work." Thanks, QWERTY. I might be a bit biased in the matter, but I feel confident in saying that the time spent listening to this show is almost always going to be more useful and more productive than watching TV. Remember, if you leave a review or send me a boostagram, you too can have it read on the show.